Today's episode of the Star Local Media High School Sports Podcast is brought to you by Poor Richard's Cafe and Star Local Media. Poor Richard's Cafe, Plano's oldest restaurant since 1973. They are open daily from 5:30 a.m. to 2:30 p.m., serving the three most important meals of the day: breakfast, lunch, and dessert. It is true Texas home-style cooking made with love and grit. That is Poor Richard's Cafe, located off of Avenue K in Plano. Welcome to another episode of the Star Local Media High School Sports Podcast. My name is Matt Welch, being joined by Taylor Ragland and Brian Murphy. Gentlemen, it is summertime, and let's break down two more entries from our ongoing summer question series as we release these every week throughout the summer as a way to, I guess, offer up the most comprehensive preview that we can think of for the upcoming school year and all of the districts that we cover. For this edition, I wanted to look at two things that are more kind of postseason related topics, and that is kind of the impact on two things: just these regions as a whole, which we're obviously, this is the first, we just went through the first year post realignment, and obviously you had a lot of schools that changed regions, and just these regions as a whole just had a much different look than they had the previous year. So look at that, and as well as the by-district round, because I don't know about you guys, but having attended the realignment ceremony out in Birdville, for over the last handful of times. I think you were there last year, Brian.
Yeah, I mean, you were partying. It was fun.
Yeah, that's right. It's happening times out there in Birdville. But whenever they release the new districts up on the, up on the projector or whatever they use to put them up on the wall, and then you're looking to see, okay, where are our schools at, and who's in what districts and whatnot. There's I always look at, first off, obviously where the schools that I cover align. What district are they in? What region are they in? And then who's in the district next to them? Who are they going to be seeing in the first round? Because that is the one thing about the postseason. Like, what happens in rounds 2 through 6 or 2 through 7 if it's football, that's all that can all change year to year, but you always know what district you're going to have to look out for in that first round. And the by-district round itself can kind of lay a lot of the groundwork as far as what our teams are able to do in the postseason, because you've had some years where, like in 2016-17 and 17-18, where the Plano-Allen-McKinney district was paired next to the Louisville ISD district, and you had some matchups in the first round that were, third, fourth, fifth round quality in terms of, like, you had state-ranked teams scoring off in the first round. And it is kind of weird in hindsight, because it's the best way to do it, just because there's no perfect system. When we watch pro sports or whatnot, and we see the bracket format there for the playoffs, and you have the best teams on opposite ends of the bracket, and then with each round, theoretically, they're closer and closer to playing each other. Well, it's not insane to think that you could have the two best teams in a region square off, in the third round some years. So proximity can, ironically enough, plays a far bigger, part in what these teams are able to do in the playoffs than we realize. But with how the regional landscape changed at the 6A level, at least, Taylor, with with Plano and Allen and McKinney being moved from Region 1 over to Region 2, in hindsight, what a sigh of relief that had to have been for those schools.
Yeah, I think the thing that strikes me is, we were talking about it, off air earlier. It's like 9-6A became they just ran that region. 6A Region 2 belonged to 9-6A, I think, went to state, in 5 of the 8 sports, played each other in regional finals in 2 of them.
Yes.
It's just insane how, once they literally, whichever one got past the third round, which is when they would have to play each other for the first time more often than not, they had a really good shot at making the state tournament. And you get out of, the way of some of those crazy programs, the South Lakes and all the dominant programs of the world. And not to say that Region 2 is just a cakewalk, but clearly, 9-6A is one of the most competitive districts in the state, and in a softer region, I think it's fair to say. And that resulted in, pretty much exactly what we thought it would. When you kind of look down and look at things at the beginning of the year, you don't know how things are going to pan out, but kind of had an idea, I think, if we were, being honest, that this could happen and that they would find success. But the degree of success for 9-6A in that region was was pretty insane.
And I crunched some numbers just to kind of encapsulate just to what extent 9-6A, had a lot of success in the playoffs. They did send 5 teams to the state semifinals within Region 2. So Allen football, Allen girls basketball, Allen girls soccer, Plano West volleyball, and McKinney Boyd baseball, all won Region 2. That was the most of any.
And only one of those is really a quote-unquote surprise. I mean, Allen girls basketball, you could maybe call that, but they were super talented. I think Boyd is the only one that you sit back and I didn't really expect that. The other 4, genuine paths and just kind of made good on expectations.
That was the most of any district in Region 2. District 9-6A also had 15 teams go at least 3 rounds deep in the playoffs, also the most of any district in that region. And I went through and checked just their record with each round of the playoffs, and it's insane to think District 9-6A had a plus 500 record in each of the first 5 rounds of the playoffs. In by-district play against District 10-6A, which was the Rowlett, Saxe, Garlandville ISD plus Wiley district, 9-6A went 24-8 on the year. In the second round, 9-6A went 15-9. Third round, a little bit closer, went 8-7.
Having to play each other sometimes. Yes. Honestly, I mean, it's pretty much 500, but they often had to play each other.
I believe that was the case in volleyball.
Yeah.
And because because you had, what was it? It was Plano and Prosper and Plano West and McKinney played each other in the third round.
Girls basketball.
Girls basketball was similar with Plano and Prosper, and then Allen played Saxe and whatnot. But then you had, in the fourth round. So if you simply got to the regional semifinals, 9-6A had a 7-1 record. So it was almost like just a free pass to the regional championship game. And then in the fifth round, they had a 4-3 record. But as you mentioned earlier, that number is deceptive because 2 of those 3 losses came in head-to-head matchups between 9-6A because they played each other in the volleyball regional final with Prosper and Plano West, and then Allen and Prosper played each other in the girls basketball regional final. I know, sorry.
Prosper on the losing end for both of those.
Hey, first year in 6A, not
so bad.
Pretty solid though if you're already getting to the regional finals in a couple sports as a first-year 6A program. However, to be fair, things took a turn south when they got to state because that district did not have a team play for a state championship. Among those 8, the 8 standings-based sports, they had an 0-4 record in the state semifinals. So nevertheless, but still, I mean, just what a run. And again, that's the only comparison was the district. I want to say it was 15 6A with the Conroe schools like the Woodlands and College Park, and then your Klein schools, Klein Forest, Klein Collins, Klein. I mean, that's kind of the Houston area's equivalent of the Plano Allen district and whatnot, just from a sheer size and impact standpoint. But yeah, I mean, you compare that though to what the 9-6A programs had to face the year before with, having to go up against, Louisville ISD and Southlake and Byron Nelson, who were all in the same district at once. And I went back, they went 14-18. By comparison. So, I mean, from going 14-18 in the first round in 2017 and 18 to going 24-8 against 10-6A, I mean, you could argue there may have been no bigger winner from realignment as far as just the regional impact than District 9-6A and the Plano, Allen, McKinney schools. Because then you look at how Louisville ISD and Capel were impacted by this, and just to look at kind of what the year was for Region 1, and even though that Louisville ISD didn't have to see a Plano or an Allen in the first round, I mean, the constellation wasn't much different because then you're lined up opposite the Southlake, Keller, and Northwest ISD district and whatnot. And I mean, between Southlake and Byron Nelson and Keller, I mean, those are some of the best programs in the Metroplex, and it reflected in some of the most competitive first round action of any by-district pairing. Louisville ISD, Capel, and 6-6A got the better of 5-6A, but only 17-15 in the first round across the 8 standings-based sports. And then you see just what a bear Region 1 was on these schools because 6-6A in the second round had just an 8-9 record because that's where you run into the DeSoto's and the Cedar Hills, the Duncanvilles, the South Grand Prairies, and that was especially in a sport like basketball where Louisville ISD cranks out some awesome, teams every year, but so does DeSoto, so does Cedar Hill, so does Duncanville, and a couple of those teams went on to the state tournament. So, yeah, it's just, again, proximity was kind of their worst enemy in those situations. And then District 6-6A only had a 3-5 record in the third round. Only Flower Mound baseball, Flower Mound volleyball, and Flower Mound boys soccer made it to the regional tournaments. 2 of those 3 went on to win state, though. So obviously, if you're
pretty good conversion rate.
As far as what the end game was. Obviously, like you said, pretty salty there. But yeah, Region 1 was, with Region 2, 6A, it's not until like kind of the 4th or the 5th round when you start running into the Woodlands and those Houston area
the regional
schools.
Tournament sports, that's when things get hairy for the 9-6A programs especially, and anybody in that region. That's when you start to kind of bump into, like you said, the teams that are actually giving you a shot at advancing.
Which is, we're in Region 1-6A, given and I think like the run that the Plano girls basketball team went on when they won state, and them having to take down, like I just mentioned, some of those schools. They had to beat DeSoto in the 2nd round of their run, Cedar Hill in the 3rd round, Duncanville in the 5th round. I don't know, it really does kind of resonate a bit more to get out of Region 1, just because those areas are a little bit closer to home and whatnot, and the Metroplex is just so formidable in terms of just the quality of programs that they put out. So I mean, you saw, just Region 1 was such a grinder, and I'm sure that there's some Plano coaches and Allen coaches that were just so relieved to get away from that for at least 2 years. Meanwhile, Brian, with over in Class 5A, I think that whatever boogeyman exists in 6A with Plano and Allen, Frisco kind of has the same thing going there, where if you're a school like Lake Dallas or the Colony and you can get in a region opposite Frisco ISD, then you're maybe patting yourself on the back for that you might be able to make it a little bit longer in the playoffs, just without having to worry about those Frisco schools until the state tournament.
But there's one team that Frisco, in a certain sport, had to worry about in girls soccer. The big boogeyman that you suggested took down 3 different Frisco schools in the same playoff run. I'm talking about Highland Park.
Oh, yeah.
Beat Frisco Centennial, they beat Wakeland, and they beat Frisco Independence. All, 1st round, 3rd round, 5th round. Disposed of the defending champs Wakeland, disposed of the 9-5A champion Independence, and then went on to win state. You look at the rest of that region, you're like, man, Frisco, they have the best teams. They arguably have the best all-around district when it comes to boys and girls soccer in at least 5A, but they just have to go through Highland Park, and it's just not fair. Why couldn't we have Independence,
so stupid,
Wakeland, and the Highland Park, and then whoever else you want to throw in there in girls soccer, have them play in the state tournament? Those are easily the best teams, in at least 5A in the state. Maybe throw in like a San Antonio or Houston team, and then we'll deal with that later. But the fact that Wakeland had to play Highland Park in the 3rd round was just brutal. Sticking with 5A, I want to talk about football. Okay. Because football in 5A Division 1 and 5A Division 2 in Region 2, which, Frisco split in half. You have 6 Frisco schools with the Colony and Little Elm in Division 1, and then you have 4 Frisco schools with Denison, Broswell, Lake Dallas, and Lovejoy and Princeton in the other. Well, both of them had to deal with state champions in that regional tournament, getting out of the region. So you look at, Reedy, they had the unfortunate task of having to face Aledo. No one was going to beat Aledo last year. And obviously last year, no one was going to beat Highland Park, who's in that same region as the Lone Stars and the Colonies and then that's level. In the 5A Division 1. So it's like, all right, well, good luck getting to the state tournament or getting to state, at least a state semifinal game of football with Aledo in your region. And then on the other side, the other Frisco schools have that same misfortune of having to go against, eventually, if they make it that far, having to face Highland Park. So it's just not fair. Not fair.
It is funny, just from like a proximity standpoint, because you think of like how much distance separates like those Frisco schools from like Little Elm and Lake Dallas.
What do you mean?
Just what's the distance between, like, if you're driving from Frisco to get to Little Elm?
Okay, so Frisco and Little Elm, they border each other.
Yeah.
Are you talking about, the Frisco schools amongst each other, or just
I just mean just because, like, when you think of like where that line in the sand was drawn from Region 1 to Region 2, and I'm not talking football, more just the other sports.
Okay.
But that's just like that's what the difference was. It was like literally like 10-15 minutes worth of drive time.
If that, yeah.
Between like Little Elm and Frisco, and then you look at like the fortunes for a program like Little Elm and having to get out of the shadow of Frisco ISD. And
gotcha.
Because odds are, because when they were in 14-5A, the 2 previous years, you knew that you were going to see a Frisco school in either the 1st round, and if you were fortunate enough to get past that round, probably the 3rd round.
They have the 10-5A problem now. They've left 10-5A with that same exact problem.
Yeah, but Little Elm and Lake Dallas and 8-5A and the non-football sports, they had to deal with Grapevine, or Azle, or some of the Colleyville Heritage in that 1st round in certain sports. and then they were traveling, man.
And well, while we're on that though, because I went through and did the I guess their record with each round of the playoffs, like I just spouted off a ways back for 9-6A, and it is crazy just when you think of how much of an impact that first round had on the overall scope of things. District 8-5A across the 8 standings-based sports had a 12-20 record in the first round of the playoffs. So really, really tough, just a tough road to hoe. I mean, there were sports like volleyball. I want to say they got swept by that, the Grapevine Colleyville district, and then they took a lot of losses in soccer and whatnot. But then you look past that, in the second round, they had a 9-3 record.
And what's funny is that 9-3 record, the best girls soccer team in the district, they lost to Burleson Centennial in that second round. So it's like, wait, that could have been 10-2. That record could have been even better, but then you have like strange games like that.
So they go sub 500 in the first round, 12-20. For those 12 teams that got to the second round, 3/4 of them went to the third round, and then in the third round, 8-5A had a 7-2 record. In the fourth round, they had a 5-2 record. I mean, so literally just getting out of the first round was the toughest part of this whole thing for 8-5A. Seemed like.
And another boogeyman in that Region 1 was Mansfield Timberview boys basketball that went on to win state, because they beat Little Elm, the Colony, and Justin Northwest all consecutively, third, fifth, and in the state. I don't know where it all went down, but they had to go through Mansfield Timberview, another state champion. No one's going to beat Mansfield Timberview. So it's just not fair again,
And it's it's kind of crazy just how that how much proximity plays into just the kind of success that a team can have, because I don't know if you spread these schools out based on like the quality of program, which to be fair, there is no right way to figure that out. There's no right way to figure out the strength of one district versus another, what one team's record means versus what another team's record means. But yeah, I mean, just to get past that first round, so 12 teams out of the 32 got past the first round, and almost half of them made the regional final.
It's also just so weird to sit here and look at Region 2 and just that monster oversized Frisco district compared to by district opponent 10-5A with 6 teams in it. Like it makes sense, and I understand exactly why you would do it. You kind of keep it all in the family and have them play each other and stuff, but like you said, there's no good way. But it is strange that you just sit here and look at how lopsided it is and how tough that road for those Frisco teams is. I mean, just to get out of their district, and then you have a 6-team district like 10-5A, where it's like, well, Lovejoy and McKinney North are making the playoffs and everything because there's 6 teams. Like, it's a weird dichotomy in Region 2.
Throughout the year, I was like, man, none of those 10-5A teams have a chance. Maybe McKinney North, had some, boys basketball. They might have had the upper hand, the snap.
Minnie Allen and Lovejoy
it was just like a product of them being in such a weak district. I saw them just get destroyed in sports like volleyball and girls basketball and stuff like that. But then McKinney North actually held their own. So they obviously made the playoffs in all of the 7 sports, excluding football. They went 4-3 against Frisco. And then they even had success later on the road. I know Kendrick Johnson, he's talked about it a whole bunch. The huge upset again, beating Independence in the third round, run ruling them, something that no team had ever even come close to doing against the district champion in softball. But McKinney North, man, they held their own. They had some surprising upsets. They won in the first round in girls soccer, something that I did not think was going to happen when they beat Lebanon Trail. But yeah,
there's challenges there from Lovejoy too.
Lovejoy gave them some good challenges.
I mean, you got to look at volleyball. Lovejoy is almost. I mean, those are fantastic matchups. No matter who they draw from that Frisco district. Soccer, both the soccers. Lovejoy will hang around, especially on the boys' side. Baseball, softball. I think it's only getting better too. I mean,
if at first glance you're like, okay, North Lovejoy, then they can swap. Wiley East, they beat Wakeland baseball in the first round. I thought that was a shocker. I know a lot of people weren't expecting that too. So 10-5A is not just some pushover that I kind of thought they would be at times throughout the year, despite looking away from teams like Lovejoy volleyball and stuff like that are traditional powerhouses.
Because I want to mention Lake Dallas too, because that's one of the programs that I think really benefited from just needing a change of scenery. I don't know if when you look at the runs of the boys soccer team and the baseball team and just what the rules that they got on, do you think they're able to approximate that if they're still in Region 2 going up against the Frisco schools?
Hell, they may not, speaking for the baseball team, they may not approximate that if they end up with the 4 seed.
Yeah.
I think everything just kind of fell well. I think that Lake Dallas boys soccer in particular would have succeeded in any region this year. I think they're just legitimately that good. Maybe they run into some buzzsaw like Wakeland or something stupid if realignment's different. But I think they had a legitimate shot at beating anybody. But the baseball team, I think, definitely benefited from being where they were. But they held their own too, because Burleson Centennial was supposed to beat them and didn't. Like there are some really good baseball programs, in Region 1. And like I said, you avoid Colleyville Heritage, the state champion, by a play-in game. Yeah. So, I mean, that season looks completely different if you lose to Denton Ryan in the play-in game, get the 4 seed, and go get smoked by Colleyville Heritage, because that's what would have happened. Not that Lake Dallas was bad, but that team was, it was just one of those teams. You mentioned Mansfield Timberview in boys basketball. Colleyville Heritage in baseball was just one of those teams that wasn't going to be denied. They were like, we have Bobby Witt one more year, and we're gonna go do state title stuff, and you guys can forget it for this year. So I don't know. It's tough to say. But I think the boys soccer team for sure would still have been very competitive.
Was the Wakeland boys soccer team the top seed to come out of that district? Mm-hmm. So if we still had the original 13-5A, 14-5A alignments, that means that Lake Dallas and Wakeland would have played each other in the third round.
That would have been something.
That would have been brutal.
Yeah, it's just, I don't know. It's just crazy in hindsight to think of just those little things that, like, just the margin between a team that goes, 2 rounds deep versus 5 rounds deep. It really is
1 round deep.
Yeah.
In some cases. I mean, like you said, that 6-6A district, like, those teams are amazing, and some of them every year in 6-6A versus 5-6A are just going to lose.
Oh yeah,
because somebody has to.
If you're just going to, like in a sport like volleyball or soccer, where you just, if you were to power rank the teams in Region 1 and 6A, and how many of those teams would like the top 10 teams, you might have like 3/4 of them score off within the first 2 rounds of the playoffs. It's that insane, man. Hey, lots of good high school sports in the Metroplex, as I think this podcast has made pretty clear over the years. I don't know. I can't think of any other angles that I want to take on this. So yeah, you know what? We can take a quick break. We're going to do a quick line change at the very least for one of us. We're going to bring in Justin Thomas for a chance to say goodbye.
Farewell tour.
A farewell tour for Justin Thomas, and we will do so on the other side of this break after a word from this sponsor. Today's podcast is brought to you by Star Local Media. 14 newspapers and websites with a print distribution of 270,000 homes and monthly page views of 600,000 online. Star Local Media, your community voice for news. And now, let's get back to the podcast. Welcome back. We've still got Brian Murphy on hand. We have subbed in Justin Thomas for Taylor Ragland. JT, appreciate you swinging by to taking some time out of your busy schedule to I guess for the last time ever chipping on the podcast. So the goodbye column is out there. It's on the website, so it's not like we're breaking any news here or whatnot. But obviously, you've had a very massive development in your career over the past month or so. So just for those who haven't heard, just enlighten the masses on just the latest in your career.
Well, I'm going to be moving on to Avid Golfer magazine. The office is out there in Irving, so I'm not going to have to relocate or anything, but I've actually already gotten started there, worked a couple days. I'm an avid golfer myself, so it's something that's right up my alley that really just kind of thought like it would be a good move for me. Been here for a while and just thought maybe doing something different, meeting some different people and doing some different stuff would be a good move for me. So I was pretty excited when the opportunity came about, and it was a tough decision. I really enjoyed my time here and everything, but just felt it was the right move for me. So, I went for it.
Yeah, we're doing this, this goodbye portion of the podcast, I guess a week and a half after your last day here. So it's a little bit belated, but nevertheless.
Yeah, the 4th of July a little intervened a little bit there, but.
So when you think back on, because I just want to kind of jog your memory now, because you've had one of the most extensive runs here of any reporter in this company, and I mean you've straddled one of the most difficult workloads of any reporter maybe in the state, it's fair to say. I mean, it's for folks who don't realize, Justin was responsible for our sports coverage in Carrollton, Capel, Flower Mound, Louisville, and the Colony, and he used to have the South Lake paper on his plate as well. I mean, that's insane. So when you think, because you were here for, what was it, 11 years?
A little more.
A little more than 11 years. I mean, just how much this entire game has changed in that time. And if you have a chance to check out our website and read Justin's goodbye column, a lot of it is him kind of reflecting on his earlier days here as a sports reporter. So yeah, I mean, when you think back to 11 years ago, I mean, just what was it like at the time, kind of breaking into this industry and trying this thing out?
Well, it was interesting. I mean, for starters, when I, found out about the position and interviewed and stuff, I had a journalism background and degree and stuff, but I hadn't had a job or anything like that. I had never, written for a newspaper or done anything like that. So that was interesting in itself, just kind of getting started. And then, as I kind of alluded into the column, just everybody, within the office and coaches and everybody kind of in the markets that I cover were just like so helpful. And like, I mean, I'm sure you guys experienced the same thing in some sports, but like, I didn't know anything about volleyball when I started. Like, I still don't know a whole lot about soccer. And, some of the coaches were just so helpful and, kind of explaining the game and, not treating me like an idiot when I might ask them like a dumb question or something.
I was not as lucky on that front.
They wouldn't look at me and be like, "Are you kidding me? What kind of question is that?" They would talk me through things. So that really helped out, made the transition easier, and like really kind of helped me get running. And
so you never had a coach tell you, "What kind of question is that? What are you talking about?"
Not really, not unless
like after a bad loss.
Maybe one that I already had like a working relationship with, and they were just kind of riding me a little bit, almost out of fun, but never really serious. I thought about putting some things in the column, some negative things, some moments that kind of stood out that kind of frustrated me or angered me, but I figured, nah, let's just stick with the good stuff, keep it a little shorter, and keep rolling. No need to throw that stuff out there then. But never really had anybody criticize me for their comments. You get short answers and stuff. If the question's not good, just a no or a yes. But never really called out or anything. So not the same for you, Matt.
No, there's only one time that really that comes to mind. That was the very first time that I interviewed Jadon McCullough, the Plano senior head football coach, who I have a great relationship now with. But when you think back at the time, I mean, so we used to do on Tuesdays we would have meetings with all of the football coaches. I was on the Plano beat and the Plano East beat. Kevin Hagelin, our old sports editor, did Allen and Plano West, and this was like my first week on the job. It was during the second week of high school football season, and I went to Coach McCullough's office, and they were getting ready for a game against DeSoto. And at the time I didn't really know, I guess, how quick the turnaround was from one week to another as far as how quickly coaches got game film when they began scouting for another team. So I kind of asked, so I mean, just so have you guys begun scouting DeSoto, and just kind of where are you guys at with that? And he just gives me this deadpan look and just says, that's a stupid question, right? And I'm sure I nervously kind of fidgeted my way through trying to, I guess, rephrase it or whatnot. But no, I mean, things have been great between me and Coach ever since. But no, I was not as lucky as you were in my very first interview.
Because now you know that they were scouting DeSoto probably a month before the school year even started.
Pretty much.
You come in there like, hey, do y'all know what's going on with DeSoto? Do you know
this plucky little upstart reporter is trying to make a good impression.
No, never had anything like that. I did have one coach get on my case for putting a quote in the paper that he didn't want to be in the paper, apparently, and he kind of got on me and said, I didn't want that in there. How are you doing? Well, sorry.
That's always tricky, though. So if it's not off the record.
Quote,
So sometimes they'll at least give you a little preface, and this part's off the record and whatnot, and we don't want this out there or anything. But don't say anything. Then it's it just flows with the rest of the interview. It's fair game.
The biggest thing that ever got under my skin was covering a football game one time, and it was a real heartbreak. I don't want to throw any names out here or anything, but it was a real heartbreaking loss for this team. And so I was looking for the coach afterward, and he was nowhere to be found. And I saw one of the assistants, and he was just kind of milling about, and he had I don't know who the people were, but apparently it was his wife and kids. And I asked him, like, hey, have you seen Coach so-and-so? And he just kind of looks at me, he's like, no. And so, I keep looking around, and about 5 minutes later, I run into that coach in the tunnel, and he laid into me. He's like, don't you ever interrupt me when I'm talking to my family. And I was like, what? Give me a break. I wanted to tell him, like, hey, man, your players are handling this better than you are. But I don't know. I kept my cool and just took my medicine and moved along. But
how long ago was that?
6 years, 5 years.
I feel like I have an idea you're talking about too. Nevertheless, there was the one anecdote from the column, which, I mean, if you haven't read it, I want you to tell this story just because I love this, from the Coach Thomas situation with Louisville boys basketball. Just retell that story, because that's such a cool way, as far as coaches being accommodating and helping you out when you're.
First of all, it's just that it turned out to be Coach Thomas, who I didn't know at the time, but he was one of my favorite coaches to work with, just a great guy, and so It was probably, I would say, maybe the third or fourth time I had covered them, a Louisville basketball game, and it was a playoff game. I think it was at Colleyville Heritage, if I recall. But, you know, going to Louisville, you know, I know the people there. Macy always has a seat waiting for me at the scorer's table, so, you know, I figured I would just go to Colleyville and just plop down right at the scorer's table and, you know, keep my stats and stuff. You know, there was no Twitter. I wasn't using Twitter and stuff back then, so, you know, I actually... you know, I still have my sheets in my office, but, you know, I was actually keeping stats. Like, so I got there, and there was like a 2-person booth at the scorer's table. There was no room to sit, and I was like, oh man. And I'm kind of looking around the gym, and it's packed, and I was like, man, where do I want to sit? Am I gonna have to just like stand over here and literally stand and do this? So I'm just kind of standing there, kind of looking around, and I see Coach Thomas, and he's kind of looking at me, and he's just like, come over here. And I was like, hey, what's up, Coach? How's it going? He's like, what are you doing? I was like, I don't know. I'm trying to find out where to sit. He's like, come on down here. I was like, huh? He's like, come on down here. So he sends one of the managers out to the other side of the bench, and there I am just sitting on the bench right next to the coaches, reporting on the game, doing my stats, but literally right in between the players and the coaches. I'm just sitting there on the court. So that was, but that's just kind of who Coach Thomas is, and how a lot of the coaches I, you know, was fortunate enough to work with are. They were all very accommodating, and it was just crazy. Just, you know, supposed to be a unbiased reporter, and I'm sitting right on the TV bench.
Kind of flies in the face of the whole objectivity thing, but
They give you a jersey too.
yeah. So I mean, I've always wondered too, because like
That is another point though. I'll never feel weird, but I'm like, yeah, I'll take a T-shirt. I'll take that playoff T-shirt. Like,
I'm done. I have a little on playoff T-shirt. No shame.
Make sure I don't wear it to the Hebron game.
I was wondering, I always wanted to just kind of get like a little bit of a look just inside your kind of your thought process just throughout kind of your coverage week, because like I said at the start, you do have a very, very unique workload. I mean, you hear about some, you know, community level reporters that have multiple papers on their front, but not just with the communities that you had to cover, but just the wealth of high schools that were on your plate as well, because it's one thing to say like, oh, he covers Carrollton. Okay, well, there's 4 high schools within there, and then there's 2 more in Flower Mound, and then, you know, Louisville, and I mean, just with all that you had on your plate, just, I mean.
And you talk to people that like aren't really, they aren't readers per se, or they don't get the paper, or they don't really know what to do, and they're like, oh, so what do? You just go to football games? And I'm like, no, like we cover all the sports. Like, so if there's 4 high schools in one city, you know, that's 32 teams just in the bracketed sports. Like, that's all these coaches. Like, it's not just going to a football game on Friday night and then, you know, that's your job. No,
it's everything from football and basketball all the way down through swimming and tennis and the entire UIL sports calendar, and even some of the you know, the non-UIL sanctioned stuff like hockey and whatnot. But I just always wondered just how you kind of approach the job week to week with as much work as you had to do and as many mouths as you had to feed week to week, just how you made that all work. Because I mean, for any aspiring sports writer out there, you know, it's the kind of stuff that in order to, you know, break your break into the business, some of the stuff that you might have to do is taking on crazy workloads like that at a community level.
Well, you know, a lot of it was just coming in on Mondays when we would have our meetings, and, you know, kind of first things first, figure out, you know, what the big stories are, which you know, cities I'm going to need to kind of search around and dig around and find stories, and which cities I'm going to have to cut stories and be like, sorry, but I don't have room for this, I don't have time for this. Then you start to kind of look at the schedules and kind of see which games you're going to cover, which teams and markets might kind of overlap, so that you can kind of kill 2 birds with 1 stone. You know, talk to you guys, see what you guys are up to, see maybe where we could help each other out, things like that. I mean, we're dealt what we have, you know. We only have so many resources. Sometimes it's hard, like, I could easily just cover Flower Mound and have enough content for that paper like every week.
Oh yeah.
You just can't do it. Like, so some teams get the short end of the stick. Some stories don't get covered like they're supposed to. Sometimes, I mean, I try to stay on top of things, but there's times when I'll go to a game for the first time and be like, who's that? I don't know that coach. Who's that? Especially some of the French sports and stuff like that. Like,
because at the end of the day, we've got almost 50 high schools here spread across 6 reporters. So eventually, some stuff's going to, you know, slip through the cracks and whatnot.
Yeah, I've definitely called the coach and for a quote, and they're like, "Hey, I'm not there anymore." I'm like, oh, okay.
Well, good talk.
But yeah, it's hard to stay on top of that when, you know, like there's literally like 100 positions, coaching positions and stuff that you're covering. But yeah, it's just organizing it, and then as I did it more and more, it became more of a try to find stories that will work for multiple papers, so that you're not going to have to write 25, 30 stories in a week. You try to find a couple so you can minimize your effort, but still
just to maintain your sanity.
Yeah, exactly. But still get good coverage for different papers and stuff, which is challenging at times because you got to do the big stories, but you also don't want to be shorting people and not giving certain, especially these high school athletes. They all work hard, they all deserve recognition for what they do, but sometimes it's just tough to get all that in, and then you just have those nightmare weeks when it's signing day, and playoffs, and
that stretch there in the early springtime when we have 7 different sports going on at once.
So much going on.
Everyone thinks that football season is the busiest time.
No,
football season's the easiest. Really,
there's volleyball and football going on, and
little cross country here and there. But
there's only one game a week, so there's so much you can do with it. But then you get into these other sports. A couple months ago, I had a day when I was at golf, tennis, and track, all on the same day. So I mean, there's plenty to do outside of just football, and I think that's kind of one of the big misconceptions is that it's only about football. That might be what gets the interest the most, but there's still 9 other months in a work year where you have to find stuff to do.
And it's in an area like this too, because this is, I guess, the upshot of just the workload that you had, is that you got to experience some incredible high school athletics between covering Louisville ISD, the Colony, and Capel. The teams, the pro athletes that you've seen back when they were just in the infant stages of their careers.
I mean, you guys cover solid programs too, but outside of something like the Morning News or the Houston Chronicle, that's literally covering an entire area for more community-based markets. I can't envision anybody seeing more state champions and high quality athletes than I had the chance to cover. I could name all the I could go back and remember all the state champions I covered, but it's got to be at least 15 to 20, and they're all at the top classification too, because outside of the Colony's softball, that the Carrollton schools never won any team state championships, so they were all the top classification, the big dogs. So I mean, I feel lucky to get to see that.
Because you did. We
joke with Devin a lot because he's our Mesquite guy, and how many times do we get to the playoffs and I'm oh man, I got 5 games I could do tonight before Devin's already moving on to the next sport, because some of his teams don't have the postseason success that the Louisville schools and Capel and stuff have had, so it's just very fortunate.
Yeah, because you did what was it, last year, to celebrate your decade of sports writing, your top 10 teams that you've seen?
Teams, yeah.
Which, I mean, do you recall offhand who some of the some of the top 3 or 5 were? You saw that?
I could probably pull it up right here, but
because then you just did kind of a similar thing just recently with the best athlete from each sport that you've seen, which it's
literally
that's insane.
There was Gatorade Players of the Year that weren't the top athlete that I covered in their sport.
So who was the top athletes that you remember?
Let's pull this stuff up here then.
There were ones that were I know for sure Marcus Smart had
Marcus
the cut for boys basketball, Lauren Cox for girls basketball.
Did Jada Coleman even make the list?
I excluded current high school athletes, so you have to be graduated. So the softball player for me was Mary Beth Gorsuch from Louisville.
Which, solid pick, too.
Yeah.
Who was that chick from Hebron, the volleyball girl?
Adana?
Yeah.
Rollins. Yeah. I actually picked for volleyball Chiaka Agbagu from Capel, who's currently on the U.S. national team.
Good pick.
She was Big 12 Player of the Year at Texas, and all-time block leader at Texas. So, softball, Jada would be a shoe-in. She's incredible. But I went with Mary Beth, who, I had to not include a Gatorade winner there, Heather Stearns of Hebron, that went on to Baylor. She didn't make the cut. Chioma for girls soccer from Capel was one of my picks. Baseball was a tough one. I went with Colin Poche. He's on the Rays organization right now.
Yep, former Marcus pitcher.
Jamal Adams for football. I'm trying to think back to those best teams, but the ones that stick out to me just kind of immediately were obviously Marcus basketball winning back-to-back state championships with Marcus Smart.
That's one of the, as I was just thinking back some of the time, because, I remember, just being so, wrapped up in that first run to state that Marcus had, just seeing them. I think I saw him play, Plano in a non-district game, and it was just immediately like, oh my God, Marcus, I've never seen a player like this at the high school level.
He actually got to cover them the sophomore year that they made it. I think he went down that year. And wasn't the Colony there that year?
The Colony was there when they played that Houston Yates team that was scoring like 100 plus on everybody. But it was earlier in that postseason when I think Marcus and Louisville played in the third round, and it was UNT. And I remember tagging along with you for this game. I wasn't covering it. I just wanted to go see it just because it was two rivals. And I mean, again, Marcus Smart was such a fun player to watch. And there was the added animosity between those two, because I want to say, wasn't there like a little bit of controversy surrounding Marcus and, maybe the way in which they had assembled their roster?
There was a little bit of like an investigation going on, I think, into Smart, and then also some other players that they had there that transferred there, like Nick Banyard and AJ Lucky.
And sure enough,
they were all cleared and everything. Yeah, but
Louisville did not care, because I do remember going to that game, and because Louisville had a great, both student sections brought it, especially for the playoffs. And I remember like early on,
fun Louisville team too with Bowie and Ray Dorsey and those guys, Ryan Bowie.
And then like early on in the game, the Louisville students like mocking the "We Believe" chant and saying that we believe that you recruit, we believe that you recruit. But and then Marcus Smart going out there, and I had his. I looked up the game story, and he had. Let me see if I can find it. He had 20 points on like 8 of 12 shooting. It was like 8 rebounds, 7 assists, 7 steals, 3. Just a typical Marcus Smart line in high school.
That was a every Tuesday, Friday appearance. Like he wasn't the come out RJ Hampton drop 50 on you style, but he dominated in every other way.
The kind of player that could have averaged a triple-double if he had, gone out of his way to. He could have maybe done it with a quadruple-double some nights too, with what he racked up with steals and blocks.
It was a fun interaction with Coach Thomas after that game as well.
Oh yeah. And then because then, like those, covering those Marcus teams, and then I remember what was it, that showcase on ESPN. That might have been like a year or two later, because it was both. It was both. It was at the new Louisville gym.
Louisville gym,
And it was Marcus going up against the what was it? Was it Montverde or?
It was Montrose Christian.
Montrose Christian that had
Kevin Durant.
That had Justin Anderson at the time, future Maverick draft pick. He was playing against Marcus Smart in that game, and then the game beforehand, I was there to cover Prestonwood against Arlington Grace Prep, and that was Julius Randle and Zach Peters, Mickey Mitchell going up against Isaiah Austin, and that loaded.
Emmanuel Moutier.
Yes, Emmanuel Moutier was on that team. Yeah,
I think we look back on that day, and there was like between the 4 teams, something like 14 or 15 players that played Division I college, and like 6 or 7 that made it to the NBA or were drafted or on an NBA roster at some point.
I need to do like a retrospective from that night at some point if we ever reach near the 10-year anniversary of that, because that was I've never
tried to get my hands on that Julius Randle elbow guard. He threw on the sideline. What happened? I guess his elbow pad or something was bothering him, so we're sitting right there covering the game, and he takes it off and just tosses it to the sideline. It like came right down at my feet. I was like,
slide it right in the bag.
Future NBA player elbow guard. We left it for him, but that was a fun night.
Go ahead and put that thing on eBay now. And see
man, what a
the other one that, going back to that Marcus basketball team, the thing that stands out to me the most was sophomore year, the year they first made the championship, and Perry Jones was the big deal here.
Duncan.
He was the big shot, the big recruit, and I remember leaving the office, and Kevin Hagelin, who you mentioned earlier, was like, "Oh, so what do you think?" I was like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "What's going to happen tonight?" I was like, "You know what's going to happen." He's like, "What?" I was like, "Marcus is going to beat them, and Marcus Smart's going to be the best player on the floor." Sure enough, really awesome game, came right down to the wire, but the Marauders got him, went on to the state tournament, and then the rest is history. 2 years in a row, 2 state championships. So that was such a fun team to cover with all those guys.
And then the run that I think like Hebron volleyball, with getting to cover like one of the great runs of any volleyball program with 3 consecutive state championships. When you think back to just what those programs were able to accomplish, and just how effortless at times they made it look in the playoffs.
I just think in volleyball in whole, I've covered 7 of the last 10 state champions.
That's insane.
Even 4 times, Coppell twice, Flower Mound this year. Like,
wow. Yeah.
And it's between volleyball and then it seemed like I'll have to go back and look. Maybe one season I didn't have a team at the state soccer tournament. Maybe like between volleyball and soccer, Louisville ISD and Coppell just represent. I mean, there's no other way to say it. Like,
I mean, those are the two that sent you out this last year on a high note with getting the covers two state champs in Flower Mound. Oh man, so let's see. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that kind of springs to mind from this.
Another thing that kind of memory that stands out was, speaking of soccer, was, it's fun to cover good stuff, but at the same time, I mean, we have lives, we have things we want to do, and I'll never forget covering the state soccer tournament. I think it was 3 or 4 years ago, and we had 4 teams down there. Of course, all 4 win their semifinal matches. So, boom, there's four soccer games I have to cover on Saturday, 4 state championship games. Not that I'm rooting for any of our markets to lose, but I wouldn't have minded having a little gap or anything and not having to do 4 in a row. Well, of course, the first 3 games all go to shootouts. So the Coppell championship game, which is supposed to start at like 7:30, starts at like 9:30. I'm at that soccer park from like 9 a.m. to like 2 a.m. It was so long. And at least Coppell put the beat down on in the final championship game and avoided an overtime and shootout there. But it was just stacking up and stacking up and stacking up, and it's like, great game. And then it's like, great, and I was like, oh man, I got like 4 stories. They're all, how do I fit all this stuff into all these stories? Like, it was crazy.
Because you're not out there writing like 200 words and a cloud of dust or whatnot. These are full-fledged 800 to 900 word game stories over state championship games.
And then you're trying to finish up one while another game's starting, and you don't want to miss what's going on, and you got to get your quotes from the players, and this player's MVP, I got to talk to them, and now I got to get it all up at this other game. It was crazy.
Well, yeah, man, and this is, I guess now it is all a thing of the past. So, as you move on to this next chapter with Avid Golfer, just what kind of stuff are they going to have you doing out there, and just what's the new job going to entail?
Well, I'm just, on the staff. I'm a writer, so I'll be doing stories. I'll be doing like a little restaurant review this week, which will be interesting.
What kind of restaurant?
I got to pick.
Okay.
I haven't settled yet, so tweet me if you have suggestions. But yeah, stuff like that, editing. I think I'll be doing a little page design again.
All right.
And then, I just kind of got some, get started assignments for this month for the August edition. So I'm sure they'll have more coming my way, but just kind of settling in right now. And, as I've talked with you and kind of alluded on Twitter to some people, still hope to be doing football games for you guys and stuff on Friday nights.
We'll keep you around for the fall, no doubt, dude.
I'm still looking forward to get out there and seeing some football.
Awesome, man. Well, hey, obviously I speak for everybody here, and I'm sure all the folks in the communities that you've covered, man, that obviously we very much appreciate the work that you've done over the last, 11 years. And I mean, managing, again, a workload that if you can find another reporter in this state that has had more on his plate over the last 10 years to cover, I mean, it's just insane that you were able to make all that work, dude. And you did incredible work while you were here. And yeah, dude, wish you nothing but the best of luck in this next chapter, man. I know you're going to crush it over at Avid Golfer.
Well, I appreciate that. And I mean, all the feedback and stuff I've gotten on Twitter from, people I've worked with and stuff has been incredible. It really means a lot. It's going to be weird. It's going to be weird not coming in here and just having our sports arguments and debates just in the interim while we're doing our work and stuff. We already power ranked our Western Conference NBA teams this afternoon. So
working so hard this morning.
We just have to do that stuff more over email and text, I guess. But it's, I've really enjoyed working with you guys, and I'm not lying when I say I'm going to miss it. It already is weird, but I just appreciate all the kind words I received, and for those that I haven't got a chance to talk to personally, I still try to. It was tough timing with the summer. A lot of people were out of town for 4th of July weekend and stuff. So there's still a lot of people I want to get a chance to talk to and say goodbye. Coaches, athletic directors, people in the community and stuff like that. So I really appreciate all the kind words I received.
We wish you nothing but the best going forward, buddy. Good luck.
Well, appreciate that, and like I said, I won't be a stranger though.
And that'll.
We need to get that. We need to get a Star Local Media pickup reunion basketball game.
We do, man. Bring back Chris O'Dell, Damon Sales,
Definitely.
the whole crew. Yeah, it'd be a fun time. Yeah, and that'll do it for this episode of the podcast. Justin, again, appreciate you for tagging along. I know you got a busy times right now for you. Brian, Taylor, appreciate y'all for tagging along as well. We'll be back on Monday with another episode of the podcast to round out our series, talking some of our awards for our annual varsities and whatnot. So, folks, in the meantime, you enjoy the rest of your week, and we will talk to y'all later.